Okay, I gotta ask a quick question. What was up with the proportions of this man's head? Like, at first, I thought it was just, like, in-between shots. Like, that's what you would assume. You know when an anime is trying to flow from one scene to the next, and you have, like, the in-between art that doesn't look that good, but it's for the animation can flow with it? Well, that wasn't actually the case with the proportions of this man's head. There was many scenes to where there was just, like, a still frame, just seeing his lips move, and you just see his head incredibly small compared to his overall body. And I'm like, what is wrong with this man? Like, if you compare with the last episode and when you look at this episode, they're entirely different in terms of their structure of their body. So I'm just like, whoever was designing this man's head seriously needs to go back to anatomy and actually know how to, you know, draw a head and in proper proportion to a human body. But I have to say, though, it did give me a good laugh because it reminded me of one of my favorite scenes from a show, like a movie I watched when I was a kid, which was Beetlejuice. If you've ever watched Beetlejuice, you remember the shrunken head that, you know, Beetlejuice, you know, was sitting right next to and all that, and he looked really creepy, but he was also funny because of the final scene at the end of the movie. Well, basically, I was reminded of that, and I'm just like, this man is just straight up the dude looking like, you know, that guy from Beetlejuice. But okay, jokes aside, though, let's get right into it. I don't want to necessarily beat a dead horse. At this point in time, I think we're all very aware that One Punch Man Season 2 is just outright bad. It's not just because of, you know, JC Staff. As I've said many times already in the follow-up videos before even Episode 1 aired, it's so hard not to talk about certain things when you just notice it. Like I said, the body proportion, it's so awful. But I can overlook that, though. I really can. I can overlook it because errors happen that can be fixed in, you know, the BDs. But the problem I have is something like this. What you see here is a Fanimation that someone made, and here is the user that did it, you know, from DeviantArt. Basically, this is a Fanimation that was created on this scene for One Punch Man. And if you compare it to the anime equivalent, it's just outright awful. There is no comparison. It is so bad in comparison to the Fanimation. I'm just like, it really goes to show that if they were given time, there would be a really good anime here. It's not the fact that there was just a lot of talent on One Punch Man Season 1. It's just what One Punch Man Season 2 really needed was more time. And now, I know many are going to probably say, but Chibi, it's been years since Season 1 came out. Obviously, since it was announced a few years back that One Punch Man Season 2 was coming, they should have already had this all done. But that's not how anime actually works. That's not how it gets made. Even if it's announced, it doesn't necessarily start getting produced and they start working on it probably until maybe a month, maybe a couple months right before it's about to come out. And obviously, as we all know, the production of One Punch Man Season 2 is just so bad. Like, to the directors having to be shoved onto one episode, to just seeing how many people are working on each individual episode and how they're definitely running behind, and they're basically probably making an episode by episode each week. Like, for instance, when we got this episode today, they're probably just now working, or maybe just now finishing next week's episode. That's what I'm trying to say, is their production is so bad right now that it's a yikes. It's a big old yikes, because there's not really much more you can say about it. And I think what this series, or Season 2, could have really benefited from is just more time. But obviously, it's not JC Staff or the animators. That's just how the committee works. The production committee in Japan works. Given something, they have to do it, and they have just so many things they gotta work on, they can't obviously give enough time to certain projects. And One Punch Man, obviously, it bit the bullet. It can't really do much about it. And so, I feel kind of sad, really, because that's what I'm trying to get at here, is that this Fanimation, the reason why it looks so good is because, obviously, you can see in the description of the creator, says they spent like a month or two working on this. So, that's the point here, is I feel like this really just goes to show the flaws within the anime production cycle of how anime is even produced in the first place. That's what One Punch Man Season 2, I think, does a good job of at least letting us, the audience, know, is that there's definitely a major problem in the production committee and how anime is produced, and there definitely needs to be a change one day because it causes problems like this. But okay, to get off of that, though, let's get right into it. This episode of One Punch Man, where to begin? Well, as I've been saying, there is no sense of urgency. I've been saying it for the past 2 episode reviews, and my opinion still stands for this episode. If you're watching this episode, once again, there's no sense of urgency. You don't have a feeling of heroes being destroyed left and right. You don't have a feeling of these monsters overwhelming hero society. You have nothing like that. Even though we see a bunch of, monsters coming in and just demolishing individual heroes, S-class heroes coming in to step up, it doesn't have that pizzazz, that life to it that it had in Season 1, which is not just because of the art and animation quality. And it doesn't just stop there. I mean, to the whole situation with the Atomic Samurai scene, which is honestly one of the better scenes of the episode, it still falls very flat because the way they cut from one scene to the next, there's not enough time to really process what's going on and how good that scene really is. For instance, when Atomic Samurai is just sitting around all these other masters of the swords around in this dojo, they're all talking, introducing themselves. This is our first time really getting introduced to them. There's really nothing to really give life to this scene, and then all of a sudden you find out this dude that's obviously shady is actually a bad dude, turns into a monster, which does reveal how monsters were slightly created. It doesn't change the fact that it isn't really that dire of a situation, just because Atomic Samurai, he just wipes them out pretty much instantly. So yeah, the point here is it goes back to what I've been saying, is that it lacks that emotion that can really make you invested and worry about said characters or care about said characters. And it doesn't just stop at that either. You also have situations to where in this episode, we're constantly going back and forth from the tournament to the monsters, and it is very important. Once again, like I said in my last episode review, it's meant to demonstrate the differences of what's really important between the heroes and what's going on in the tournament. And they do try to show that throughout this episode, but even then, it falls very flat because we cut back and forth between individual fights, and even though this is obviously properly adapting the manga, once again, it lacks that life. It's not just art and animation. There's not enough background to, like, I guess, immersion in it. Like, you don't have good sound effects, you don't have good music, you don't have, well, the voice acting's good. Like, the comedy for the voice acting is good, but you just don't have enough life to it to really boost it up. And, like, let's look at Konosuba for a second, okay? This is a really perfect example of a series that doesn't have the best art and animation. It does have some good moments with art and animation, but it's always been using its derpy art and animation to its advantage, and it's because of the quality voice acting to the, the music and the voice actors and the sound effects that really make Konosuba so amazing. And when you compare it to this, a series that has obviously a lack of art and animation, other departments really need to pick up the slack. It needs to have better sound design, music, voice actors, and the voice actors are doing the best they can, but there's just always so much you can do when you don't have other little things falling into place behind it. So that's the biggest flaw with this. When you're going from scene to scene in between the tournament, there's just not enough emotion in these scenes to where you're like, this is awesome, or like, holy crap, this is going on. And, you don't get that. So like I said, it's just overall a major disappointment. It's a big disappointment of an episode, and I'm really sad. I really am sad to just see, once again, how even if you adapt an anime properly, it doesn't always mean it's going to be a good anime, because there's other reasons how a series can just be outright awful if it perfectly adapts something. It really does just come down to the animators and the people working on it to really prove how much passion they have for a project. And if they're obviously working on so much, they're not going to be able to show that. It's impossible as a human being. So at the end of the day, I'm just sad. I'm really sad just to see episodes like this, because this was a really good moment. This was a good moment in the manga, and just seeing how it looked, there was a few good moments in the episode, but seeing how it looked, it's just like, okay. But let's get into the plot, though. So the plot of this episode, how can I say? Besides obviously seeing the conclusion of the martial arts tournament, we do find out that the Monsters Association, they can create monsters from these little monster cells, and if humans ingest them, basically they can become monsters, which this kind of gives us an origin story to maybe how monsters really came about, majority of the monsters at the very least. And it starts to make you wonder, though, is this something that Garo is going to do? Because you remember, Garo, he wants to become a monster. That is something that has been stated. Will Garo devour those monster cells and become a monster, or will he stick as a human, but, you know, be self-proclaimed to be a monster. That is something that was brought to my attention while watching this episode, and it will make you think, will that be Garo's path? Will he choose something like that? And also hype for next week as well. I mean, we got Watchdog versus, you know, Garo, so let's see how that's going to go down. But I think that's pretty much about it. Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about this week's episode. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Please let me know. And if you enjoy my content, you know, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.